How do you leverage money? Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. We are still doing this series where I'm answering questions on Instagram for the community. So a bunch of you have reached out, put a whole bunch of questions in my Q&A, and I said I would answer them on the podcast. So this question here is from Gabe, all the way from the USA. So this is for you, buddy. So what are the first steps to leveraging income as a young adult? Invest, guidance. Okay. So when we're talking about leveraging money, I've got to be careful. So first of all, I'm not a financial planner. This isn't financial advice. I'm just giving you a whole bunch of different ideas that you can go and investigate. So first things first, when we think about money, we have to understand what money is. Now, money is an exchange of value. That's really what it is at its core. Now, when you have a look at what makes the most amount of money, it's normally managing or leveraging value. It raises a bunch of questions. First of all, where am I the most valuable? So you probably want to ask yourself that question. Where am I the most valuable? Where can I offer the most value to society? Where can I offer the most value to a large amount of people in society? So if you have a look, Steve Jobs created Apple. Between him and Steve Wozniak, they came up with the iPhone, the iPad, Apple devices, the computers, all of that sort of stuff. So essentially they connected the world through these devices. Because of that, that company is one of the first big $1 trillion companies. If you have a look, Mark Zuckerberg did the same thing with Facebook. He provided a product and a service for a low price point to almost every person on the planet. Now, if every person on the planet gives him $1 and there's 8 billion people on the planet or around about that, you essentially have $8 billion. Now, obviously it's worth a lot more than that, but my point is that he's providing a product and a service that's of value to a large amount of people. Now, where does this all get fucked up? People have been taught that money isn't the exchange of value because of the finance industry. And the finance industry is a bunch of cokeheads who are fucking out of control, who essentially create products that make no sense in regards to value, and they trade them almost in a casino. That's essentially what they're doing. So what you have, like if you go back, these are some of my favorite movies. So go and watch The Wolf of Wall Street. They're essentially taking these low quality businesses and then selling them on to other people. Then they're all fucking around behind the scenes and doing stupid shit. They're not selling value. They're essentially selling an idea. Now, when you get trapped in an idea, sometimes it can fuck you up. Now, sometimes ideas make a lot of money, but most of the time, ideas aren't worth shit. I would also recommend going and having a look at The Big Short. That's probably my favorite movie, The Big Short. Now, you have the same thing happening in the housing crisis, which caused GFC. You've got a whole bunch of these people working in investment banks, in the finance industry, and they're fucking around creating these products that make no logical sense to the average person. But what they're doing is they're adding bits and pieces in here, taking that out, and they're playing these silly games with people's money, which then most people now sit there and they go, well, money's worthless. Money's not worth shit. But it's an exchange of value. Now, we don't have to use money. You can use wine. If someone does work at my house, I can buy them a case of wine and give it to them. That's the same thing. It's just that when I go out onto the street, it's so hard when I go to the shops and I want to buy a pair of jeans and I say to the cashier, hey, will you take a case of wine? And she's like, I don't drink wine. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what else can I give you? I got a bunch of pens. And she says, well, I don't want pens. And I go, shit, I can teach you some things. And she's like, I don't like personal development. And I'm like, what can I give you? It's too hard when you have so many different mediums of exchange. So what happens is people create a medium of exchange that is readily accepted by most people. And we call that money. Now, then we have foreign currencies, and then foreign currencies do the same. So they're essentially trading or swapping these currencies. And if you've got a country that is, I guess, has a higher value currency, then their dollar is worth more than another country's dollar. That's essentially the most simple way I can put it. Some of you right now who are working in the finance industry are freaking out because it's a little bit more complicated than that, but not much. So when I think about money and making money, I always think about value. I take it back to its most simplest form, because 99.999% of money generation for most people is going to be created from the value that they create somewhere. So you can buy a house, you can renovate a house, which adds value to it, and then you flip it, and therefore you keep a little bit of that money. You can buy a house, you can put people in to rent it, it creates value for those people because they might not be able to afford the home loan. They might have bad finance, but you've created something that's valuable to them, and now you're winning. You can go and get a job. So my staff work with me in this company. They come to work and they say, I have this skill set. And I say, excellent. I will pay you for that skill set. If you do a job, I will pay you for that skill set. And so then I give them money because I'm exchanging the value that we make through the company in our products and services, which then I give to staff. I give them a little bit of that value. Now, value is created through lots of different mediums. If you're courageous, you can probably create more value, right? Because you'll take more risks. If you're more intelligent, you'll probably create more value. So that's why reading, studying, and learning is important. If you have high self-belief, high self-worth, and you understand your values, you're probably going to create more money. This is why a lot of people who come and do my events over time end up making more money. Why? Because if they get their mindset right, they see their value that they have and they build their own value, which means building your own self-worth, self-love, self-confidence, self-respect. You're more disciplined. You become more valuable in society. If I said to you, you've got two people you're going to go hire, an undisciplined person and a disciplined person, which person are you going to hire? So the more you work on yourself, the more valuable you become. I started off as a diesel mechanic that was essentially a shit kicker that I really didn't enjoy working. So I had a low work ethic. Found something that I loved. My work ethic went through the roof. I grind my ass off. I worked super hard as a personal trainer. I studied, I learned, I went and did courses, I went and did seminars. And because of that, my value went up. There are all these other personal trainers. There are fucking millions of them. And I kept learning, studying, developing myself, not just in the field of personal training, but in sales, in marketing, in branding, in all the things that made me more valuable. So most of the personal trainers that I worked around weren't making a lot of money. I was making my last year of personal training, which was about 13 years ago now. I think I made $275,000 in that year. That was unheard of back then. Now, like you get $1 million trainers, and there are definitely some people out there who they're good marketers, they're good branders, they're good brand builders. They make a lot of money. There's a guy I was following the other day, he said he made $10 million as a personal trainer in the last financial year. Why? Because he's a great personal trainer, but he's an amazing brand builder, a great communicator. He's got a great mindset. He builds teams of people around him. He looks after the community. He's entertaining. All of those things make him more valuable in our society. This is why we got to think of money as value and not as money. Because when you think of money as just this thing, people will try to get it, but they do it in stupid ways. So like I see people rushing into these crazy different schemes. Like I watch people doing Forex trading and they're like, oh, I'm trading Forex. And I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, we're exchanging money and we're buying, when it's low and then trying to sell at a couple of extra points. And then we take the money from that and then we do this. And I'm like, so you mean like gambling or fortune telling? Now, I used to do Forex because I was a moron, right? I used to do it. I walked away with the same amount of money that I started with. I didn't make a shit ton of money. I didn't lose money, but I walked away with it. Now, I was lucky. Over a 10-year period, most people do not walk away financially better off if they're trading, especially day trading. There's a great book called Winning the Loser's Game by Charles D. Ellis, and he goes through and shows statistics. So he goes and he statistically looked at all of these financial traders to find out what happens over a period of time, what happens in the finance industry, what drives the finance markets, and he put it all in that book. When you read it, you realize that day traders normally end up broke. Why? Because they're gamblers. They're essentially gamblers in the marketplace. And they're gambling against some of the biggest, most technologically advanced companies on the planet with some of the smartest people. It's almost impossible to win that game in day trading. But if you invest in companies, like I invest in shares, when I find good companies that tend to be fairly profitable, what I do is I go and take a little bit of my money and I invest in those companies, which means that I give them money so that they can use it for growth. And because of that, they say, well, here's a share in the company. That's essentially what shares are. So I don't just look and I go, oh, I think this thing's going to go up in value. I don't think like that because that's stupid. What I do is I say, well, what's the intrinsic value of that product? So for instance, if you look at Facebook and let's say 5 years ago, you said, okay, only half of the world use Facebook. What's the likelihood that the rest of the world will use Facebook in the next 5 to 10 years? If there's a high likelihood, then it's probably going to go up in value. If I buy mining shares or mining stocks in Australia, mining is huge. Iron ore. What's the likelihood that people are going to keep buying iron ore or building stuff out of steel? It's probably fairly likely. So that company is probably going to be fairly profitable, providing over a period of time, providing it is run well. Okay. So I invest in that. Some of the big supermarket chains. What's the likelihood that people are going to keep buying food? Highly likely. So I go and invest in those things. Coca-Cola. What's the likelihood that people are going to give up drinking Coca-Cola tomorrow? Probably highly unlikely. So therefore, are they going to keep selling more and more of those products over a period of time and being profitable? And the answer is probably yes. So I go and I invest money in those companies. But I'm not telling you what to do, right? Because it's all around value. I personally like shares. Some of my friends make a lot of money in property because they're property developers. Some of them renovate and flip. Some of them buy rental properties. Some of them buy apartment blocks. All of those things create value. Here's what else creates value. Business. If you build a business that serves people and you do a great job, then your business is always going to be profitable if it's run well and it's managed well and you can manage your mindset and you can manage your growth. If you do that, you're going to make more money. So I make the majority of my money in business. And then I go and I take some of that money and I invest in shares and some other things as well. Over the years, yes, I have done crypto, but it was because I noticed that most people do stupid shit, and understanding human behavior, I was like, right, I'm going to get in crypto when it's low. And I rode the wave up. I got out. I made some money there. I've made some money in gold because most people, when the shit hits the fan, they want to buy more gold to store cash in or to store their money in. So I bought some of that. I made some money in that. I've done a lot of things. Like I've done options trading. I've done foreign exchange. I've done day trading, all of that sort of shit. But that was when I was young and stupid. Over the years, I've become a lot more intelligent financially. And so all I'm going to say is that money is just the exchange of value. So if you want to make more money, go back to the very basic fundamentals of finance, which is go and find things that add value to society and invest in them, or build something that adds value to society. If you're a plumber and you can build a business where you go out and you help mums and dads or people who want plumbing done, you're going to make money. If you go and work for somebody, you will go and make money, because if you have a product and a service that you can offer to them, and by the way, I'm just going to say this because most people are fucking idiots and they don't understand this. When I hear people say, yeah, but I want to work for myself. No one works for themselves. I don't work for myself. I have clients. Those clients are essentially my bosses. So they say to me, Michael, you didn't do your job properly. Give me my fucking money back. So I have to give them their money back. If you've got a boss, your boss doesn't come to you when you work a job and say, give my fucking money back because you did a shit job this week. You can normally get away with that. You can't when you run a business. So everybody works for somebody because everyone has to follow the rules of the exchange of value. If someone values your product or service, they will pay you. Therefore, my customers pay me because I add value to their lives. If they don't, then they give me the sack. And when they give me the sack, I make less money. So it's in my best interest to keep adding value to them. If you do exactly the same working for a boss, you can make a shitload of money. One of my mentors is the chief operating officer of one of the biggest privately owned business here in South Australia. Now that business sold for $1.12 billion. Now he makes an absolute fuck ton of money, more than most business owners. Now, he's also financially safe because he works for somebody else. But essentially he gets a paycheck at the end of every week, but he operates at a very high level. So he goes into $1 billion business and says, hey, I can help you make more money. I can do X, Y, Z, and I can do it better than most other people. They hire him. They pay him really well because of the value that he adds to the business. So if you're a chief operating officer, if you're a chief finance officer, if you're, any of the chiefs, the C-suites, you'll probably make a lot of money. The chief executive officer of Qantas, the airlines, I think his final year, he got paid $34 million. Right now, he works for somebody. There's all these drop kicks out there. They're like, I don't want to work for somebody. I want to run my own hours. I want to make my own money. I don't want someone to tell me what to do. This motherfucker made $34 million. And you're going to go and start a business that you're probably going to make like 200 grand in the next 3 years, maybe if you're lucky. And you got to pay tax on that. Right? So what I'm saying is, don't fall into the stupid trap of the masses where they think that working for someone is dumb. It's not. It's actually really smart. For most people, business is really tough. It's a really tough game. You have to learn fast. You have to be super adaptable. You have to manage your emotions. You have to learn leadership, management. You have to understand the finances. You've also got taxation. You've got legal. I try to talk most people out of running a business because running a business sucks. It is really tough. But if you love it, it's great. It's like being an MMA fighter. One of the guys I was talking to tonight, he's an MMA fighter who's trying to get into the UFC. He's come and done a few of my events. Ray's his name. He's probably listening to this. Anyway, Ray, shout out, buddy. But I know he just got a contract today and I'm not sure what he's fighting in, whether it's ONE or whether it's UFC or I'm not sure. But anyway, if you speak to most people and you're like, right, would you make $1 million? They go, I would love to make $1 million. And I go, would you get in the ring and get the shit kicked out of you and have the potential of not making any money? And they go, well, no, I probably wouldn't do that. So that's the same as business. When you run a business, you're essentially getting in the ring to get the shit kicked out of you because your competitors want to take your clients. Clients are also very demanding. You've got to find a product to market fit. You've got to learn a lot, and you're probably not going to be successful for the first 5 to 7, maybe 8 years. And you're going to have to reinvest a lot of that money. If you take a lot of money out of the business, it's because you're in an industry where it's going up at the moment. But eventually that industry will become oversaturated. So e-commerce was a great example. If you're in e-commerce 10 years ago, you made an absolute fuck ton of money. You were just printing cash. These days, it's a lot harder to make money in e-commerce. Back in the internet bubble, if you built websites, I had a friend of mine, he built the first website for Pepsi. Now, he went to Pepsi and had to explain to them what a website was. He bought the domain name www.pepsi.com and then built them their first website and then sold it to them for millions of dollars. Now, they didn't even know what a website was back in the day when he first built it. But anyway, he went through that internet boom and everything went boom, but it eventually went bust. And now these days, I remember going to events where people were selling domain names because they were like, your domain name is the most important thing you ever own. It's more important than real estate. And so people were spending like $100,000 on a domain name just for coaching.com. Now, yes, sometimes people have made a lot of money out of that, but there are a lot of people who bought domain names that are just stupid that they never made any money from. They just lost a lot of money on it. When you've been in the industry for a long, long time, you see a lot of these stupid things. Now, the same thing happened with the crypto market. Now, look, Bitcoin's doing great. There's probably going to be a future in Bitcoin or some form of cryptocurrency, whether the Federal Reserve regulated or not, I don't know. No one really does. There's different ideas. But I've watched these patterns happen over and over and over again, and they become very predictable, right? People were starting meme coins and all that sort of shit. It was obvious to me that most people were just going to get ripped off. But most people didn't think they were going to get ripped off until they got ripped off. You know, when you see Jake Paul and all those guys creating all these NFTs, and they're selling these NFTs for millions of dollars, I was like, man, this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. And most people lost money on them. People were printing out, creating NFTs out of nowhere and then selling them to a whole bunch of people for $1,000 here, $1,000 there. They're worth zero. They were literally worth zero then and they're worth zero now. But why? Because people buy ideas sometimes. Industries that are going up tend to make good money. Ideas, when there's excitement and stupidity in an industry, you make a lot of money. When governments reduce regulations, when they invest a lot of money into certain areas, right now we have something called the NHS, which is a national insurance scheme for people with disabilities. In Australia, they're printing money. But what's happening is that there is so much money being blown on stupid shit that eventually the government will pull the pin on it and all those businesses, almost all of them will go broke. But that happens over and over and over and over and over again. Most people aren't smart enough to realize that these things are just fucking happening over and over and over again. But if you step and you look back, you'll see that these things are happening. What my point is if you want to make money, always focus on the value, because value, if it's created, you'll always make money out of it. But you've got to make something that's valuable to the masses. I could sit here and create a triangled wheel for a car and think that it's more economical, and then I can go and try and sell it to the market and no one wants it. Why? Because it's so different. It probably won't work. So I'll probably lose money. But if I go and create something like a scooter or a bike or something like that hovers above the ground, that uses less fuel and you don't have to ride it, and it's got, it uses solar powered energy and shit like that, and it's easy to stand on and it just goes, that thing could be worth an absolute squillion. We just don't know. If you always want to make money, always come back to value. My suggestion to everybody is become more valuable. This is why people who join my Business Growth Odyssey program tend to make a lot more money. I was with a guy called Ben McGreen today, owns a flooring company, making a couple of million. And today he said, I've doubled my business. We've had 100% growth over the 12 months that we've joined the program. And he said, I'm more fulfilled. I enjoy life more. I've got better management, better leadership. I got rid of shitty staff. He's like, man, we're crushing it now. He bought another business as well, and that one's already doing 7 figures in the first 12 months. What does that have to do with anything? Because he became more valuable. I didn't focus on building his business. I built him. Most people aren't smart enough to realize that. When you build a business, the biggest hindrance to most businesses is the owner. If you build the owner, the business grows organically. A lot of the time, the business owner won't grow and they keep trying to grow a business, but they're grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding, grinding, pushing. I had a conversation with a business owner today. We're having a bit of a chat. He booked in for a one-on-one call. And I was like, bro, if I was you, I would be burnt out, tired, stressed out, fucked off as well. Because I'm like, your only strategy is grind. You just work harder. Okay, there's all these problems. I got to work harder, got to grind more, got to put in more hours. And I'm like, you're working 7 days a week. You're burnt out, you're tired. You've got like 20 staff. It's costing you way more. My question is, financially, is it worth it? and you're reinvesting all the money back into the business, which means essentially you're taking no money out of it. You're broke and you just got more stress. That's it. Imagine that, being broke and more stressed. It's not worth it. So I was like, you got to change your strategy. You got to change the way you operate as a person. You either have to reduce your stress and enjoy it, or you've got to start pulling money out of the business so that then you actually feel like you're getting something for your effort and your hard work, or both. But I said something's got to change, and the first thing is always you. Anyway, I hope that answers the question. I know I didn't give an exact thing because I can't tell anyone how to invest their money. It's your money. I've lost a lot of money over the years through investing and shit like that when I first started, but it's because I did dumb things. I invested in shares I knew nothing about the company. I did foreign exchange trading. Why? Because I wanted to get rich quick. I didn't lose money on the trades, but I lost money on having to invest in these programs and shit like that where you have to learn it. I didn't want to sit in front of a fucking computer looking at charts all day long and like, screw that. Now, I know there's some of you out there that are like, man, you're probably doing it wrong. Well, look, if you're making money, all the best to you. But let's talk in like 10 years after you've been doing it for 10 years, because most of the guys that I know who make a lot of money in those trading platforms, they do so because of only one or two reasons. They work for a major firm that controls the market. So companies like Vanguard or BlackRock and all that, they control the market. So they're making a shitload of money because they control the market. That's number one. Number two is that they're selling you a product about how to trade. So the people that I know who make the most money from trading is normally those who are selling you a product trading. And they make all their money off of the people that they sell the shit to. They don't make it from trading themselves. But most people don't know that. But you do when you've been in the inner circle for a long, long time and you see this stuff happening over and over and over again. I could name a bunch of the guys that have been in the game for 20 years teaching people how to trade and make money. Yeah, they're not making shit tons of money. They're making money off of everybody else. They're not making heaps of money trading. Very rarely do they trade. I hope that helps. That was from my main man, Gabe from G Money. My number one suggestion, if I have to give advice to anyone, is become more valuable. That is the number one most important thing. I spent my 20s not worrying about making money. I wanted to develop skill sets. So I worked to learn, not work to earn. All of my friends who were worried about getting rich quick, buying houses, fucking cars and all that shit, none of them have supercars. I have the supercar because I was smart enough to realize that if I became more valuable, I would have more money. It's just I had to wait 10 years. I didn't buy my first supercar until I was 30. By the age of 40, I've got 2 supercars. I live in a, multi-million-dollar house. I'm able to travel anywhere. Life's fucking sweet. I got a great business. I got amazing clients that I love working with. I've essentially set my life up because of the way that I operated in my 20s. Most 20-year-olds are such in a rush that they want to buy a supercar, they want to get rich. But when you rush shit like that, you're going to go broke most of the time. Not everybody. I've got some friends who have made a lot of money when they were young, but I have a lot of friends who made a lot of money when they were young and then they lost it all by the time they were 30 or 35. So play the long game. That's what I would suggest. Anyway, Driven Mofos, have a great day. I hope that helps. If you're not already following me on my Instagram page, jump across there. I'm doing Q&As consistently. My Instagram thread is michaelmojo_success. So michaelmojo_success. If you have any questions, I normally do a Q&A at least once or twice a week. This one here was specifically for me to do a podcast episode on. So jump across. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.